Welcome, travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Lee Wanika, and this is Tabletop Journeys, where we will be your not-so-humble guides on the quest for RPG adventures. What?
Welcome, everybody, to tonight's episode. So I'm really excited this evening to be coming to you. As you can see, there is a third face in our display this evening. So, but first off, Mr. Lee Wanika Miller. Good evening, sir. How are things down in the from what I've heard, slightly entindered state of Connecticut? That's
Yeah, we've had some stuff going on. Hopefully it'll get under control. But be careful out there. Just because it's colder doesn't mean it's safe to burn things.
It doesn't mean it's dry.
Y'all be careful out there in the public and learn some stuff.
Yeah.
Not everybody's a dragonborn sorcerer of some kind, We got to look at things differently.
Do dragonborn sorcerers intrinsically understand fire safety? Is that
assuming they are of the dragon subclass? Yeah.
that went way far afield. I'm not sure what happened.
I think
there.
we're getting nature
I was
versus
stretching. Squeezing every little drop of geekery out of that sentence, and it just didn't quite work.
Hopefully somebody bringing us back onto rails here, freshly from AcadeCon prep, and this episode airs just after what is indubitably the greatest AcadeCon of all time.
It's the 12th one, so obviously
right,
it's the best one so far.
Mr. Michael Ross, how are you, sir?
Hey, that's me. I am great. I'm happy to be here. We're talking about one of my favorite things to talk about, which is Dragonborn Sorcerers and D12s, right? That's why I'm here.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's let the cat out of the bag here a little bit. Here. So before we kind of get too much further here, so obviously anybody listening to the show has seen now Michael on here a couple of times here. He's going to appear periodically on the podcast here, and more specifically, you're going to see his shining face and the shining face of all his friends periodically on other channels in other ways. Also, we're trying out some new stuff this year and into next year, so we are really excited for this collaboration. As we have said 100 times, the work that you have done on the various podcasts that you are involved with has been really instrumental in the development of this show. So obviously, very excited to go ahead and be working with you more closely. So
I'm excited to be here as well. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's roll on with the show for tonight. So tonight, episode 199. Actually, Lee Wanika, I was talking about this earlier today. We are almost at Big 200, which is that's a whole separate ball of incredible whatever. But episode 199 tonight, we're going to be talking about player agency and kind of specifically player agency versus railroading and tips and tools for like UGMs and DMs out there. How does one avoid doing one while promoting the other, sort of thing? And so Michael, we'll get to you in a second because I have very specific questions for you on this front.
Okay.
But Luminica, let's dive in with you first. So talk to me about where you think the line kind of between those two is, because I think that we're probably aligned on this, but maybe not. You surprise me all the time with your wackadoodle in that sense. So
I do have a lot of wackadoodle thought processes at various times, but on this one, I think you and I are fairly well aligned. I think the goal is to make sure that either as a GM, storyteller, DM, whatever the title you choose, and especially if you choose the title storyteller, you are not so locked into the story that you wish to tell that you start dictating actions and feelings of anyone other than your NPCs. That's the core. And I think the line is actually not obtuse in any way. If you are running a game and for whatever reason you create a scenario, allow a scenario to be created where you are telling a player or players, you feel this way. Or you start by taking this action, you have gone over that line. Now, there are things that you might want to start in media res. So you can certainly start an adventure. Your group had been on a wagon train and you are beset by a horde of rampaging villains, and now they're on you. What do? You can certainly start that way. That's not railroading. That's setting the scene. You tell them what they see. You tell them what they hear. You tell them what they smell, what things feel like, the weather, whether they're cold, they're warm. You can set all kinds of dials and levers. What you can't say is you're scared, you're angry, you're worried. Let the players do that. On the content writing side, if you're writing an adventure or building a campaign setting, unless you're doing something like you did with the Make 100 project, unless you're writing from an NPC character's perspective. So this book or this work, this part of the work is somebody's diary or somebody's recollection. Do not interject how somebody feels. Again, stick to the 5 major senses.
Yeah.
And from there, you are always on the side of providing agency and building a scenario that people can enjoy.
I love it. I love it. We are very much in line there. So I will add my thoughts onto that in just a second. But while you're conveniently taking a drink there, Michael, so you said earlier that when we were kind of pre-show talking here, that you had kind of a specific kind of media reference that you wanted to go ahead and bring in. So what do you got? Dive in.
So this might be a stretch. Again, I know I've been on the show a couple times already,
yeah,
but bear with me. Well, first of all, I want to say I agree with like 99.9% of what Lewanika said. And I would caveat that I think it's okay to say that you might feel scared in this situation because of what's happening. Like shorthand for like, this is a spooky situation. And it's possible that your characters might feel afraid here as a shorthand to maybe I can't, admit I can't orate so well that your characters feel scared, but they're in a situation where it would make sense that you would be scared. To say that would be a normal response, but you still have freedom to your character to not be afraid, but you're in a situation where you probably should be afraid. I think that is still okay.
Rational people are. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like it's a scary Halloween vampire type story. I think it's okay to say like everyone else is probably afraid, but your character, you give them that sort of runway to say how they feel. Because again, you should not tell people how they feel. But have either of you watched the show Severance on Apple TV Plus?
No, but I've heard a lot about it.
It's fantastic. It is so good. I will not spoil hardly anything other than the premise of the show. There's a season 2 that's about to come out. So I have been rewatching season 1. It was one of my favorite shows that came out the year it came out. It's a couple of years old now. But the premise of that show is that there is a way to sever your consciousness so that when you are at work, you only have memories of work. So like when you walk into the building, your time starts there. You remember what you did at work yesterday. You remember the people you work with, but you don't remember anything about who you are or what you did outside of work. And then conversely, when you leave the building, you remember your wife, your kids, whatever, but you have no idea what you did at work. You have no idea what's going on at work, right? And I kind of feel like this is sort of a thing that we do as players where we agree to say we are playing a game. We are agreeing that me as a person, Michael, has sat down at a game to play D&D. And with that, there are some conceits of, to Lewanika's point, the setup. Okay, I'm in a caravan. Did I actually say that I wanted to be in a caravan? No, but that's part of the agreement that we made by sitting down at the table, that part of that is just to make the game work. I'm going to let you say and do a few things that my character will do, as long as I get control at some point. I'm a big like improv as a example. In improv is like, you're a fireman, kitchen's on fire, but there's an alien, go. Once someone says go, it is no longer my story.
Yeah.
I feel like as a DM, I have the right to say you're a fireman, you're an alien, everything's on fire. But once I turn it over to you, it's your story. So I may say there are 3 ogres coming towards the village, go. At that point, they can fight the ogres, they can join the ogres, they can try to seduce the ogres, they can try to trick the ogres into fighting each other, all the classic tropes. But if I say, oh no, you have to fight the ogres, I've messed up.
Yeah.
But I will say that there is a context that in a vacuum, 100%, I should never say you have to fight the ogres. But out of 100 times, one of those, I might actually say, no, this is a combat. Like, we haven't had one in a while. So-and-so just got leveled. They want to use their new magic item. So this is going to be a combat. So I think there are still some examples and exceptions, like, again, outside of the vacuum. But in the
may
vacuum,
not have to fight
100%.
the ogres, but the ogres are going to fight you. So, like,
right. Yeah, exactly. There may even be a story reason that they are being controlled and compelled, that they are immune to your charm or to your mental manipulation. But that's, I can still make that up after the fact if I need to, but there might be a reason why this is going to be a fight that could just be, we haven't had a fight in a while, and I know one of my players really wants to fight. So I'm going to have a fight tonight.
I know. I was
to be fair, your bards have no power.
So I've been thinking about this topic a lot. So because I started my first in-person game again about 2 months ago. We are 4 or 5 sessions in at this point. And the vast majority of the table are new players. People have never played any role-playing games before.
It's like my favorite table to run for.
It's really been intriguing. And so I have found that, again, being a grizzled graybeard with lots of rings in my storytelling tree, I have been very conscious of giving them a positive experience, right? And making sure that I'm giving... I'll even go so bold as to say I've been working really hard to make sure I'm giving them the right experience, which is a horrible standard to go ahead and hold myself to, but such as it is, like, that's welcome to my life. But really, the thing that I have been really cognizant of is their agency, and making sure that they feel like they have enough options and enough things that they want to do, enough things that I can dangle the mystery in front of them, but I want to make sure and give them enough threads that they can pull on certain ones in really any order, and that whatever ones they pull, while that will shape the mystery, no one thread is so important that if they don't pull it, the rest of it falls apart. That kind of thing. Or, like, if they pull one, then that means that they can't pull something else. So I've been really kind of cognizant of, I think, the kind of the story crafting technique where, like, I give them the beginning and I know how it's going to end, but that everything in the middle is up to them, and that can all have impact out of it. But that I know how that particular encounter or that particular session or whatever needs to end, so that I can jump myself into the next one. I've been really trying to avoid that. Really just kind of letting it play out at the table and letting whatever happens. And what I'm finding is that while I have, for the first time in probably a long time, I have pretty much the entire campaign plotted out in my head, as far as I know where I'm going and what I want to do. And I know kind of like, I know the beginning and the ending of the campaign in really broad strokes, but I'm not, like, I can't plan my next session until the previous session has finished, because I don't know what they have done. I can't say, well, they finished this and they finished that, and now therefore they will be doing this next thing. I'm not sure if if I personally, Josh, am a fan of it yet, although I can recognize the power at the table. That's more just like my controlling nature. I want the players to do exactly what I want them to do. Like, well, I don't want them to give me any surprises,
But I think part of that too is just, like, as people who like to game master, we probably feel like we're decent storytellers. We're probably people who will have consumed story in media, in games, and literature. So we have a pretty good idea of what could be an effective story.
Yeah.
And if we can guide them to make some certain choices, we can foresee how that will then become an important, impactful moment. But players don't always do that, and that's their right to not do that. But I don't think it's wrong to be like, I kind of wish if I could get them to make this choice, that will lead to this. But hold on to that loosely. If it works out, great. If not, you still have to be like, you still have to be satisfied with where you get. I do want to throw in the caveat too, is, again, as someone who runs a convention, who goes to a lot of convention and plays a lot of convention games, it is very different when I'm playing a one shot at a convention versus an ongoing campaign, whether I'm playing or running. I'm very happy to play on a railroady game at a convention, because we only got 3 or 4 hours, and like, I want to be able to have my moments inside of the scenes, but I also don't want to not do anything and at the end be like, oh, we got to go, so everybody, you win. Like, I hate that. This is just general advice. If you're running a campaign game, if you have to cut something out, cut out the middle. The beginning has to be strong, the ending has to be strong, but the middle can be flexible. But I've heard people say, rather than calling it railroading, we should call it a roller coaster. You stand in line for a roller coaster, you know where you start, you know where you're going to end, but as long as you have fun in the middle, no one cares. So sometimes you need to be a little railroady, but if everybody at your table had a great time, then you did a great job.
Yeah. To be fair, I love to be fair.
To be fair.
I don't know why I'm stuck on that word tonight. I must have said it like 6 times.
I'm just surprised you didn't hop on when you said just hold on loosely.
I actually was going to throw out a 38 special reference, and who knows, maybe I will go down to Muscle Shoals and record something later. But
we got a AcadeCon karaoke.
Yeah, I plan on it. I could do that song there. In fact, audience, if you
he already did.
So yeah, I already did hold on loosely. No, I did not do hold on loosely. I did not do that song.
Oh, sorry, I derailed it.
But yeah, see, you sidetracked me, Michael. Welcome to the show, baby.
And this is why railroading is good.
Yeah. Josh, you were making several good points, and Michael, you as well. One of the things that I had put down in my notes when I was prepping for tonight was the fact that the way to do what Josh is talking about and still have fun as a GM and the players still feel they have agency. And this works as when you're crafting and creating adventures as well, is to set up conditions. You control all the NPCs. You control the environment. So what you do is when you're creating an adventure, or even if you're looking at a written adventure, if it's not already in that, plan what it's going to take to make the bad guy swing first. Allow the players time to negotiate and talk, but you may even write down, if they threaten me with jail, I'm throwing down. If they threaten to take away my kingdom, I'm throwing down. If they try to buy me, I'll keep talking. So give conditions to your main NPC in a scene. Let the minor ones key off that main person. I'm not saying take a whole lot of prep time and prep everybody with 3 conditions. That seems like a lot of heavy lifting that's not necessary. But if whatever the NPC in control of the scene has a condition, have the other ones key off it. They do what the boss. If the boss growls, they fight. And if you're talking about beasts, same thing. Animals attack under very specific circumstances. So go with that. Look at our natural world. Even if you've got a fantastical creature, what is it most like? Under what circumstances would said creature attack? If that condition exists, they attack. Yep. The players can do what they want. They can create situations to roll dice, but if they cross that line that you were prepared for, now you've got a situation where, the fight started. And I don't think that's the negative railroading or a bad thing. I think that is part of the roller coaster that Michael was talking about. Yeah. Because as much as the players have agency, if you run your game as if your NPCs have agency, same things happen. You just get the pleasure and the knowledge of what their choices could be, so you're prepared for whatever strange scenarios the players throw you. And I think that's really the big key to help that out.
I have a question to pose because I don't have a good answer myself. Yeah. Is there a way to differentiate so that it feels different to the players between there's going to be a fight and these creatures are being magically compelled so that when the bard or the face of the party tries to negotiate, it's going to fail? Because it could feel to the players like, oh, well, DM just wanted us to fight because I tried to, trick them or seduce them. They wouldn't let it work. But if there is an actual story reason for why that doesn't work in this particular case, it could still feel like the DM is railroading, where it's actually, you just chose a bad strategy. Like I have to, as a GM, I should let you try anything, but I don't have to let anything work. Yeah. If you pick a bad tactic, to Leewinick's point, if they're like, oh, we're going to try to bribe them, but I've picked a character who in my head, I've already written down, hates the thought of being bribed, and that will insult their integrity and they will attack instantly. Yep. It can still feel like a railroad at the table. So how do you do that differently so that it's not railroading when it's actually not railroading?
I have an answer. I'm going to steal it.
I've got something I'm going to let Josh steal. And if he doesn't hit mine specifically, I'll throw mine as an add-on.
So the reason why I'm going to go ahead and hop on this is because this is a conversation that Leewinika and I had days ago, like within the last probably 48 hours, because we're writing an adventure and they're in the very first, it's a 3-chapter adventure. And like in the very first chapter, there's this encounter with these creatures. And they basically you're drawn to their lair and fight them there. And it's put in the text, these creatures will fight to the death in their lair. But they're basically beasts at the end of the day, right? And the more I started thinking about it, I kind of started chewing on it. I was like, wait a minute. That's not what beasts do. Beasts survive. Why would these beasts be fighting to the death? Like, what's the reason why that would happen? So the way that we worked around that is that more than just kind of playing the whole like, oh, well, they're magically compelled, is that we took that situation and expanded it into the setting as a whole for the adventure and said, it's not just these beasts, these beasts that you are fighting for a plot reason that fight to the death. It's that for some reason that's plot related, everything in the area does that. So it's not just that one party. So maybe, to go ahead and use your example, maybe it's not that bard that hates being bribed. Maybe it's that his entire family has an issue with being bribed, or his culture. It's not the individual. So it's not like you will fail against this person. There's a bigger reason than just that individual. It's a richer story than just, well, me as a storyteller can't have you bribe this individual, so I need to come up with a reason for him. It spreads the plot out a little bit, so it's not quite so pointed. And I think that helps it feel a little bit better at the table. It gives it more depth.
Yeah, so that was the exact point and the exact example I was about to utilize.
You're welcome.
And what I would say is that does require a little more prep time for the storyteller. Yeah. It does require a little more knowledge, even if you're reading a box text adventure, because some of that will never be in a box text. So that's why you read an adventure at least once, maybe twice before you run it, convention or otherwise. Because when you know the whole thing and you know that the captain of the guard is going to throw down if you try to bribe him, the key is you got to telegraph that at some point.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, in Game of Thrones that at some point, if cornered, a Lannister is going to try to buy his way out of it. Why? Because a Lannister always pays his debts. It's one of the coolest things that Martin did, and they successfully brought into the show. As a person who only read like about 3/4 of the first book, I thought it was a masterstroke in this exact issue. If a Lannister tried to bribe you, it was not a surprise. In fact, you always were waiting in every scene. When is he going to trot out, like, don't kill me, I got money?
Yeah.
And one of those, and the way you do that is you just make it a thing. So it's kind of like you're walking through town and you see some people, man, I almost got away with it too, but then I tried to offer some free food to the town guard, and next thing you know, I'm in the stocks for 3 days. Yeah. And that's like a passing conversation that people hear. That's the first point of reference to, they tried to bribe a guard, didn't work. There'll be some story in a bartender, like, they go to the tavern, they're looking on the board, and you'll see, a couple guards talking about how blah, blah, blah. Can you believe some guy did X, Y, or Z? One, definitely, 3 would be too much, but if you can put a little bit in there ahead of time, when they try that, and then it happens, they were either not paying attention the other times it came up, and then it is what it is, or they're like, oh yeah, should have thought about that.
Yep.
And that, so it's all about seeding the plot, right? If you want it to rain, you gotta. I'm not a kid. I won't get political.
It's about avoiding the sharp stick to the eye, though. That you've gotta you gotta be. It's a matter of subtlety, and it's a matter of setting the stage when that situation happens, so that when you're standing in line for a roller coaster, not only you stand in line and you start and end at the same spot, you can see the entirety of the track when you're in the line, as opposed to railroading when you have to worry about the spikes.
Yep. There's a fairly famous quote I've heard that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. Yeah. Kind of the same thing with this. Like, it's best, to Lee Winnico's point, if you can layer that in before we get to that fight. Yep. But if I don't think about it, then I need to do it after the fight. and go, okay,
Absolutely.
what did we learn about this fight? Because these ogres weren't acting normal. Normally, you're really good at this. So there must have been something going on so that then, like, the next time they're fighting anything, I'll be like, hey, these creatures too, they don't seem to be perceiving the world. They're very focused in a way that you remember to the ogres. Oh, they must also be under the same magical compulsion. So best to do it before, but you need to at least do it after.
And that's exactly what happens in that example, because that's the first big fight in the adventure setup. So they're going to see it. It's going to be unusual. A discerning player, like, why would a standard beast that's not magical do that? Like, you know, it's odd, or they might make a roll. Hey, what? And all you have to say at that point is this was overly aggressive, and there's no natural reason why. That's it. You don't have to give them the plot. You don't have to read 15 pages of text. If they ask, you just say it ain't right. Something is weird about that. You know, we've all seen that weird. At least most of us who've lived anywhere near any kind of woods have seen that one raccoon that's out in the middle of the day that just thinks, "F and find out, buddy."
Yeah.
That raccoon, it's rabid, or you don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Or old. Yeah, exactly.
You know. So that's that kind of scenario. There are going to be times, and there's good story reasons why you might or might not. It could be that first encounter, like, that's really weird. Supernatural is great for that. Something weird happens in town. Generally, somebody dies. But let's say it's not one of the episodes where somebody dies in the cold open, but something very strange happens in the cold open, and everybody's like, that's not normal. That's perfect for the opening scenes or the early scenes in a game, as long as you pay that off later on. There's got to be a second thing that's also not normal, and then when they conclude the adventure, they win by getting the explanation and solving the problem.
So one thing I've been doing with my game is that not only do I start each session with a recap, like, okay, what happened last session? Who can tell me what happened? And kind of use that moment to kind of like use a little bit of plot spackle to go ahead and fill in some of the ugly, right? You know, because sometimes you have to do that. But not this past session, but the session before, I also did like kind of an elaborate version of that, where I sat down and says, okay, you guys have been living in this mystery now for 3 or 4 sessions. As your characters, I want you to sit around a table talking to each other about what you think is going on. And because that let me know a couple things. One, it let me know kind of where their head's at. So I know, okay, maybe I need to go ahead and hit this angle a little harder, or I need to, I've been hitting that too hard, and that's now a red herring, and I need to go ahead and back off that kind of thing. But it also kind of, again, kind of gave them some permission to go ahead and like strategize at the table and really think through what are the clues that we have and what do we think they mean. That was really, really informative to kind of addressing this problem, so that because like, I know the mystery, I know the answer to the mystery. The answer to the mystery is not really ever going to change, but how they get it, it's the friends they meet along the way that's going to change, right? But I'm trying really hard not to make it railroady, because I want it to be satisfying for them when the mystery is revealed. So, you know, letting them tell me where they think they are, or where their character is thinking in the mystery, critical to go ahead and know, like, okay, I need to go ahead and here's the lever that I need to switch, or here's the dial that I need to turn to kind of straighten this out a little bit. Because it's either it's exactly where I hoped it would be and everything is fantastic and I don't need to do anything other than what I've been planning, or I need to go ahead and massage some of the details and kind of work up something else. So
one thing I'd like to mention is that, you know, as someone who gives advice on the internet on how to run games, I know that sometimes you can try to like condense it down to like a little pithy saying, so that it's easy to get across, it's impactful, and it can be helpful, but that can also sometimes kind of bite you in the butt. So I want to be clear that having a plot is not railroading.
Not railroading, right.
That is not railroading. The way that you implement it could feel like at times railroady, but just saying like, hey, the wizard is like trying to steal children and take them into the swamp and then turn them into like bullywugs. And if you don't do anything about it, there's going to be a bunch of kids missing.
Happen. Yeah.
You're not saying to the players, you have to stop it.
Yeah.
But if you don't, that's going to keep happening.
There's a consequence, right?
That's not railroading.
Yeah.
But again, Alex say like, you're heroes. You're at the edge of the swamp. Kind of feels like maybe you'd want to investigate that, but I'm not going to force you to.
Right.
But then I would also want to say, we need to have a conversation about why we play this game.
Yeah.
Because I play this game for us to be heroes. So if that's not what you're interested in, that's fine. But I need to do some like work on my side of like how I'm presenting the world, because I thought you were the type of people that would go into the swamp and fight the evil wizard. But you know,
maybe you don't want to kill the bullywugs, but maybe you should take out the evil wizard.
Yeah, you at least think about it, right? So, but whatever your story is, having a plot is not railroading.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Michael, I also wanted to kind of tap into your unique expertise, since we have you captive on video here. With Action 12 Cinema, your fantastic, by the way, game, which here we are, right here. Yeah. Yep. See, that's only because we're in the book. It's always in reach, you know.
Exactly.
But I wanted to talk.
I can't.
Yeah, you can't reach yours. Don't try. Yeah.
But I'm 5'3", so that has a lot.
Exactly. You know. I wanted to kind of talk about how, with a game that is in its final version GM-less, but was not apparently GM-less the entire time.
Nope.
But I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit about how you sort of grappled with this, maybe in the transition from into making a GM-less. Like, by definition, if it's a GM-less game, you can't very well be railroady because nobody knows what's going to happen. It's solely improv at that point. And yet there's still probably on some level some sort of guardrails that need to be put up. I don't know, or maybe not. Like, are there not? Or like, I don't know. Like, there's a question in there somewhere. I think you know what I mean.
The thing I would say for anyone who's not familiar, and I know we've talked about this game before, and you actually did an actual play for me that was actually very informative. One of the most popular rules in the game came directly from our actual play, so I reference it often, is that if you played a more traditional RPG like D&D or Pathfinder, you may have been in a game where the DM or GM will say, "Oh, your attack defeated the monster. Describe what that looks like. You know, how do you see that?" And that's a way for DMs to give a little bit of player agency, because really, no matter what they describe, as long as the creature is defeated at the end of your description, you can't really mess that up. And I took that moment and made the entire game. Like, that is what my game is. It's you being able to describe what you're doing to your heart's content. It looks like whatever you want it to look like. You do whatever you say you do, but there are still rules that dictate whether or not that actually helped move the story forward, right? And it wasn't GM-less for a very long time. In fact, it was very late in the process that I'm like, to do what I want it to do, to be able to have that moment be the entire game, I can't have a guiding voice, an overarching story structure that one person is dictating. I have to basically spread it around the table. So the guardrails, to use your terminology, is when you first start a session, you roll all those D12s on the tables and it gives you the outline.
Yeah. But
the agency still comes in. You've played it with me a couple of times. Sometimes things that come up in the outline don't ever actually hit the table. Like it was like, I think in our game, like the Fae was supposed to be like the big bad guy. And I think at the very end, one of us is like, "Oh wait, aren't this supposed to be Fae?" And it doesn't really impact the story because it's not supposed to be a coherent story. Like, that's the joke, is that this is a B movie. So when you forget things, it's just part of the fun.
Yeah.
And then the other element is whoever is the first player to introduce an obstacle, they get to describe what it looks like. So, you know, one of our obstacles, again, famously, was quicksand.
Yeah.
And we interpreted that as being inside of a skyscraper that was being shrunk, and we have to get out before we are crushed. That is a perfect extrapolation of how that game works, where we took quicksand, but we made it work within our story. But whoever was the first player is the one who actually said that. But once they said it, it became true. And that's how all the obstacles work. So it kind of rotates around. So Josh may have introduced a different obstacle, and that's how they saw it. But once it's in the world, we really are not supposed to break it. Like, you can, but that's the spirit. Again, that choice to be severed. You are making the choice that within this world, I'm going to play by certain rules.
Yeah.
You know, it's a guardrail. It's not a force field. You can break it if you want to, but it's there to make sure everybody kind of has fun. So hopefully that answered your question.
That actually is really, I guess, the concept of once something is established, it's now true. Like, that's kind of like, and everyone else kind of doesn't have to, but everyone else kind of honors that. It's part of kind of the player compact, right? Like, we're all here to go ahead and have play a game. Yeah. We're all here to play a game. We're all here for the same kind of adventure. Let's all do the thing. And part of that is, you know, if a player is doing a thing, don't undo the thing just because, right? Like, go with the thing that the player did. And that makes a lot of sense.
Well, the beauty of Action 12 in the context of this discussion is very similar to any of the really strong solo RPGs, right? You are rolling dice, dealing cards, whatever, turning dials, whatever the mechanism for creating the story outline or the general flow or whatever the randomization is, you're doing those things in a solo game. Collectively, those collected at an Action 12 cinema table, which, by the way, Michael, if you don't commission like a D12 size looking table, and like you've done something wrong at that point. But if you have not considered that at least once, but once you set those parameters, that's really the rails. In a traditional RPG, the rails is the things you set up in your session 0 or your session re-0, or when you or in that synopsis that the players read before they sign up on Eventbrite for one of the tables at AcadeCon on Saturday, right? They read that tells them what the players should be in for.
Mm-hmm.
How they approach that, whether they approach that with glee, whether they're the curmudgeon, whether they're the jovial one, whether they play the character who doesn't know a thing and is totally surprised, the player has severed their real world consciousness in favor of the character they're inhabiting, who's going to have an experience that this is new, unexpected, tragic, hated, whatever, right? They've agreed to what's in the copy text.
Mm-hmm.
The player said, I would love to be a part of that and have fun doing that. So once I sit down, once I pull up my sheet and put the real world in my backpack, I've agreed to it. That social contract with the other players there, with your storyteller or GM, with your game group at Action 12 Cinema, or to yourself when you put on your earbuds and you put on some good music that matches your Star Trek Captain's Log adventure that you're beginning. When you set up those things, you've said, I'm here to do the thing. And so I think that any discussion about railroadness or roller coasterness, like are we on guardrails? I think all of that, you don't even begin that discussion until people have agreed to a certain set of parameters.
Sure.
And once those parameters are agreed to, then it's about how you implement it. So a lot of this discussion is about giving newer GMs tools or thoughts to think about. It's less even specific action items. It's more think about this and you'll probably get good at it over time.
Yeah.
It's important to note that, like Michael said, hey, this doesn't happen quickly, easily, or you may not get it at the beginning. Just try to get it in there, right? It also doesn't happen immediately. I have not been very good at that my entire GMing career.
Yeah.
I probably GM'd for about 10 to 11 years before I started to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say too, that I think that in our old school LARPing days, there were a great many number storytellers from that era that kind of all suffered from the same sickness, right? We all did the same things. Like, I have a story, here's your role, follow my story, and I will tell you what I will tell you how you feel about this. And that was,
I'll tell you how cool you look. But what's funny is it wasn't always, even with the storytellers who may have done it from time to time, they rarely did it all the time. There may have been stories that were like, man, I really don't want to interact with that kind of part of the story, but I guess I kind of have to. But at the same time, there was still a game where I got to play a werewolf and go with one of the storytellers who was portraying an elder werewolf and walk into a vampire disco and tear up the dance floor while I actually played out loud DMX's Party Up. And, that was freaking fun for me. That was a great time, and even in a story that at times could feel a little directional, I was still allowed the ability to have that moment. So like you said, sometimes you can go to a table and you're fine if it's a little tighter on the direction that's being provided, as long as somebody gives you the ability to have your moments, right, it'll be okay. So give yourself some grace, new, old, intermediate. It's okay if you're not perfect at any of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're thinking about it and you see the things that work and you pay attention to what happens at your table, you'll come along and you'll get better at it.
Yeah. Again, I'm famously, if you're having fun, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't mean we can't strive to be better.
Sure.
Like I'm a better DM today than I was 3 weeks ago. I hopefully am not as good now as I will be in 3 weeks in the future, because I'm always trying to learn and evolve and get better. But a couple of things I want to call out. One, as someone who runs a convention, goes to a lot of conventions, if you are someone that is submitting an event, take some time and do a really good whatever the explanation is, the description, because to Lee Winnicke's point, that is your pitch to the possible players. And it needs to include the things like, this is a high combat game. This is a high role play game. This maps and minis or theater of the mind, because not everybody plays the game, whatever it is, D&D or Pathfinder, probably the two big ones, but they don't all play it the same. And you may think, oh, we're playing Pathfinder, so that means these things. It does not mean those things to everybody. And I've actually had some pretty rough experiences because I went to the table expecting A and got B. And that's no one's fault, but it could have been fixed if someone would have spent a little bit more time on their description so that I knew what I was signing up for.
Sure.
The other thing, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I labor over that, like even for AcadeCon, and it's a little late to put in another submission right now. But part of the reason is I was struggling with getting a proper synopsis for another event. That's a struggle for me, because it's like, did I cover enough? Did I belabor it too much? And trying to find that sweet spot. There's a magic to that. So, if you've got tips or you've got questions about how to submit a good one, hit us up in the comments, because we all collectively can get better at it, learn from it, and pass it on to other folks. And maybe we'll get some more folks running games at these conventions.
Absolutely. But the other point I wanted to mention is it's okay to have natural consequences for actions. So very classically, if a rogue is running around town stealing from everybody, eventually they're probably going to get either caught or caught onto. And so the guards may be after them. That is a natural consequence. It's totally fine. It's not like slapping the player's hand down. But I'm a big believer that you cannot fix a player problem with in-game solutions. So if you have a player who's just being kind of a jerk, like, I almost steal from the king because it'll be funny, you can't throw their character into jail and fix that problem. That is an out-of-game player-to-player discussion, because, again, they are not valuing the social constructs of, we're playing an adventure game, you're kind of taking the spotlight for yourself, no one's enjoying what you're doing, and you're actually making the game less fun for everybody. You can't fix that by messing with the characters, because guaranteed that's going to make it worse. They're going to be, oh, okay, that's how we're going to play this game. I'm going to escalate. And what, my character dies. Okay, I'm going to bring another character who's worse than what that was. And it becomes
twin brother.
An escalation. So you can't, in my opinion, you cannot fix a player problem with an in-game solution.
Yeah. More importantly, even if you could fix it with that player, the ball peen hammer that you are destroying your story with to do so, the other 5 players at the table now don't have fun. They may not have liked that, but they still could have been having fun. When you derail or destroy your entire story because you gonna make that guy learn or make that person learn, now nobody had fun at that table. You didn't enjoy it. The player who now learned a lesson, they didn't enjoy it, and none of the other players enjoyed it, and that's not a good situation. So you do really have to consider, is this a reasonable action? Is it unreasonable? If it's an unreasonable choice by the player, then you got to handle that separately. That's hey, let's grab a quick break at the end of this scene. Johnny, I got to talk to you for a moment. Sue, let's have a quick convo.
And let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're not trying to do that. That could be as simple as, just so you're aware, if you continue to do this behavior, the world is going to respond. So full understanding of the consequences. Just like, I don't think it's fair to have someone like, I'm going to jump the pit. Okay, you fail, your character dies. Like, I didn't know I was jumping the Grand Canyon. I thought I was jumping up a pothole. You got to lay out the parameters. Oh, well, just so you know, if you try to jump this and you fail, your character's going to die. Okay, well, then maybe I won't do that. If you're letting them steal it from everybody and not saying eventually there'll be consequences, and then just out of nowhere their character's arrested, that's not really fun or fair either. So explain those sorts of things. Like, this is how the game, we're all learning together. You have a new player, they may not realize that that's part of it.
That's one thing I'm really glad about. So because at my last session, they did steal something from someone that they had met, who I don't want to spoil anything about it because some of them listen to the show here, but basically they have stolen something from somebody. Maybe they should have thought about stealing from him in the first place. I think that they, coming into the next session, fully understand that something's going to go wrong with that decision. I have not yet decided what that something wrong is yet, but I'm kind of like thinking through, like, okay, if I was this NPC and these characters had just stolen what they have stolen from me, how would I respond? And who would, because the NPC doesn't necessarily know who they are. Even though they have met, it's like a social status issue. Like the NPC does not necessarily know who they are. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting sort of, it's going to be interesting to see.
And that's fine. Like, I'm glad they stole something they weren't supposed to. That's cool. But the world is going to respond, and they just have to understand that that's not you saying, oh, you shouldn't have done that. It's because you did that. Now something is going to happen.
It's not punitive. Agency. It's actually part of the story. Yeah.
Right.
It's not a punishment. Yeah.
Marcellus Wallace is going to get that briefcase back.
All right, gentlemen. I mean, that is our show for this evening. Unless there's any other points that you guys want to bring up before we wrap up here.
I think Michael said it, but I did want to say, just be open to go with the flow. Storytellers need to know that people are going to do some things that you didn't expect. Even if you set up one or two things that your NPCs or your beasts or even the environment, might do in given situations or what have you. Players will do something that you never expected. So
yeah, for sure.
That's going to happen. Also, if it's unexpected and it's very cool, be okay with that. It's been said by so many people, I don't even know who said it first. I don't even know who I heard it from most recently, but as a storyteller, whether it's your home game with your closest friends for 30 years or brand new people you met for the first time at a convention, be the player's biggest fans. You need to jump up and down even when they hit the natural 20 on the attack. You need to say, oh no, when they hit the natural 1 on the saving throw. You need to, as a storyteller, be the director, but you also have to be the audience member for your players. And you have to be that fan who follows them to every show, every event. You'll stand in line for 3 days just to get that signature. That's who you got to be. Be their fan, and the rest of this will flow very easily.
My condensed down, pithy piece of advice is to prep situations, not outcomes. So don't plan that they will fight 3 ogres. Plan that they will interact with 3 ogres who are mind controlled and are more aggressive than usual. But after you say that's the situation, they could just run away. And that, okay, then, again, the world moves on, but prep for that. What will happen, not how it will resolve, is at least a good step in the direction of allowing for player agency.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I was going to go ahead and make another reference to Nestor Cortez giving up a game-winning grand slam a couple of nights ago, but I'll save it. I'll save it for another time because I realized the wounding that I would do to my dear friend from Connecticut there. So that's
Sometimes a Hail Mary works if you're a football
fan.
It
does, especially if unless you're the Bears, in which case then it works against you. That's especially sometimes the Hail Mary works, especially when your safety is taunting the opposing fans
rather than paying attention.
The Bears.
The Bears. So anyway, that is our show for this evening. Agency, railroading, roller coastering. Where I like that term. That's kind of a nicer term than railroading. I think railroading gets a bad rap. But yeah, we'd love to go ahead and hear your thoughts, obviously down below. So please leave comments, leave feedback. If you're not subscribed to the channel, now's a good time to do it because you'll get to see Michael more often here. So really, you subscribe, get notified. You'll see him. You won't have to see us too. That's just think of how nice that'll be. And as always, if you're looking for other ways to go ahead and support the show, things that are really super meaningful, we'd love you to check out www.patreon.com/ttjourneys. All sorts of cool things there, like early access to our episodes and our Patreon only invite games. Playing a lot of Star Trek right now with our patrons, which has been an awful lot of fun. But some thoughts that, once I get some of my social life back after the holidays, some thoughts about what we're going to be doing on that front also. So be checking out. Now's a great time to go ahead and get in. So.
All right. Yeah, and let us not leave without saying by the end of the year, the goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers. We are doing our best and everything we can to get there, but we can't do it without you. Yep. So, definitely hit the subscribe button, hit the notify button, and share. If you see something you like, grab a quick clip, throw it on your Facebook and say, hey, check this bit out, or show your folks at your home table. We're happy to help. We got lots of playlists on our YouTube channel filled with really good info to help make your games legendary.
Yeah. Heck, even if you don't like what you're seeing, go ahead and comment on that, because sometimes we can go ahead and help you find the thing that you're actually looking for when you came into the wrong place. So that's, like happened this past week. So
engagement is engagement.
Engagement's engagement, right? Exactly. It's like negative reinforcement is still reinforcement, right? And it's like, So, all right. That is our show for this evening. Michael, thank you again for joining us. I'm really looking forward to talking with you more. This will be a good time. So, and Luminica, I talk to you all the time. So, whatever.
Yeah.
So see you in the future. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Bye-bye.